Hey everyone, welcome to the channel where I share creepy and scary stories that will give you chills. If you love horror and spooky tales, make sure to subscribe and join me every week for a new story. Let's get into the dark side together. Snow fell silently across the ruins of what had once been Central Echelon City. Now just a carcass of twisted steel, scorched concrete, and lifeless glass towers. The cold wasn't natural. It was deeper than winter, colder than death, a biting, otherworldly chill that numbed the bones before touching the skin. A cold that whispered. They called it the breach. 3 months ago, a light split the sky open, 60 meters wide, hovering above the clouds, a circle of pure white energy that pulsed like a living thing. The first creatures came hours later. Not one species, not an invasion, a migration. Hundreds of twisted things from somewhere else. Not just one world, many. Some flew, leaving trails of acid in their wake. Some burrowed beneath the snow, invisible until it was too late. Others walked upright, almost humanoid, their skin glistening with a wet, pulsating shine. A few whispered words in languages that no human mouth could form. Some simply screamed. 3 months. That was all it took to collapse the world. Now, a convoy moved slowly through the icy wasteland. 6 armored personnel carriers, 1 command rover, 1 fuel rig, and over 100 soldiers in reinforced Arctic gear. Their mission: reach Station Arca 9, the underground facility near Ground Zero, the supposed origin of the portal accident. Among them sat Dr. Mason Ryle, huddled between 2 soldiers in the back of APC-3, his breath fogged inside his mask, eyes distant. His ID said he was a cryobiologist, assigned as a last-minute scientific advisor. But something in it got twisted every time someone said Station Arca. A voice crackled through the internal comms. ETA to Arca 9, 45 minutes. Thermal interference is spiking. Stay sharp. Mason closed his eyes, and it began again. Images, brief flickering. Blue lights. Sirens. A console. A panel with alien symbols. Something opening. A sound like fabric tearing across the sky. Then screams. And a figure, his own face, reflected in glass, twisted in terror. But it made no sense. He didn't remember ever being there. His first memory post-breach was waking up in a rescue shelter, covered in frostbite, file stamped as a survivor. Yet deep inside, he knew he wasn't just a witness. He was part of the team that opened the sky. The convoy rolled on, unaware that the silence around them wasn't safety. It was hunting. Something had followed their heat signatures. Something beneath the snow. Watching. Listening. It would strike at dusk. It was the first thing that struck them as they moved through the broken city. No birds. No machines. Not even the wind. Just a distant, hollow howls that echoed from somewhere beyond the buildings and the ice. Thick sheets of it glazed the streets, coating the windows, swallowing entire vehicles in frozen tombs. Dr. Evelyn Hart adjusted her thermal mask and pointed her flashlight toward a collapsed metro station. This is where the last survivor signal came from. 3 weeks ago. No one responded. The soldiers kept their rifles raised, eyes scanning the frozen shadows. Even the smallest movement of their boots sounded unnaturally loud, as if the city itself had died and was listening for intruders. Commander Ruiz raised a hand. Halt! We're not alone. From the corner of a toppled skyscraper, something moved. Small, fast, then another, scuttling, clicking. Spiders, whispered Dr. Lennox. Not normal ones. Before anyone could react, one of the creatures leapt from the shadows. It looked like a spider. If spiders had 30 legs, a translucent body that shimmered like glass and hissed like a boiling kettle. It latched onto Private Foster's helmet, dissolving the visor in seconds. Screams. Gunfire. The spider scattered, some melting into walls, others darting under vehicles. A few soldiers opened fire, the bullets pinging uselessly off the icy pavement or into the chest of things already gone. Form up. Ruiz shouted. Get inside that station. The team rushed through the fractured entry of the metro, slamming a reinforced door behind them. For a moment they were safe. Or safer. The air was colder inside, Somehow, the walls were covered in a thin frost. But it wasn't normal frost. It pulsed like it was breathing. "What is this place?" Evelyn whispered. The lights flickered. Drip, drip. Water? No, blood. From the ceiling. But the ceiling was made of ice. When Marcus looked up, he saw a face staring back through the frozen surface. Human, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. "Trapped. I know this place," Marcus said suddenly, stepping closer. "I've been here before." "What?" Evelyn turned. "Marcus, what are you talking about?" He put a hand on the icy wall. "This is the station. This was the emergency exit tunnel during the experiment." "Experiment?" Ruiz demanded. "You said you were a climate tech." Marcus slowly turned to them. "I lied." Suddenly the ice beneath them cracked. A sound like a thunderclap. From the far end of the tunnel, water surged forward. Except it wasn't water. It moved with shape and purpose, slithering and splitting and rejoining itself as it came. And within it, something invisible stirred. Only the air shimmered where it moved, and soldiers began dropping one by one, dragged into the flowing mass. Ruiz shouted for retreat. Too late. The station collapsed. Darkness. When Marcus awoke again, they were deeper. A bunker. Lights hummed above. Someone had dragged him to safety. A soldier, maybe. Or one of the scientists. He couldn't tell. But on the walls, maps, diagrams, photos, all circled around one central image. The gate. And a note written in his own handwriting. "If I don't remember this later, I designed the core frequency. The portal was never supposed to stay open. Something else hijacked it." He stepped back, heart pounding. From the hallway came a strange sound. A slow, rhythmic growling. Then a voice, whispering, "You brought us here. You opened the door. Now open again." Ashes covered the streets. Not from fire, but from frost. The buildings had collapsed in on themselves, brittle from 3 months of unrelenting cold. Cars were buried beneath layers of snow and strange black fungus. The skyline of what was once New Denver now resembled the skeleton of a fallen beast, half-eaten by the unknown. Dr. Ezra Kale walked ahead of the group, his breath fogging up inside his helmet. He was wrapped in 3 layers of insulated armor, his fingers never straying far from the pulse rifle strapped to his chest. Around him, the remaining 13 scientists and over 90 soldiers moved in formation, careful not to make noise. Every sound echoed strangely in this frozen city. Beside Ezra, Captain Miles Wren, a hardened veteran with a prosthetic jaw and eyes replaced by icy blue implants, scanned their surroundings. "Something's moving ahead," Miles whispered. They all stopped. From the wreckage of a sunken metro tunnel, a tall creature stepped out. It had elongated limbs and walked on all fours like a corrupted stag. But its head was entirely wrong. Smooth, oval, no eyes, only a mouth that opened vertically, exposing spinning rows of teeth. Ezra's heart kicked into overdrive. Something about this thing. It stirred a memory he didn't want to recall. A flash, a laboratory, red warning lights, a sphere of swirling clouds. Screams. His own voice, yelling over control panel, then nothing. Just white. Hold position. Miles ordered, but the soldiers opened fire. The bullets pierced its skin and the creature screeched, but it didn't bleed. Instead, vapor hissed from the wounds, releasing sub-zero gas. One soldier froze mid-motion, ice racing across his armor until it crystallized his body like glass. Panic broke out. Another monster emerged from beneath a storm drain, spider-like, made of translucent cartilage, crawling in zigzag patterns too fast for the eye to follow. It jumped onto a soldier's back and melted through his armor like acid. Ezra screamed, "Fall back!" To the tunnel. They fled through an underpass leading toward the bunker. As they entered, thick steel doors closed behind them. The walls vibrated from the monsters slamming into it. Then silence. Inside the bunker, dim emergency lights blinked. The place had clearly been abandoned in a hurry. Terminals were cracked, chairs overturned. But in the center of the room was something Ezra recognized immediately. A tall control pillar, smooth obsidian, covered in glowing red glyphs. And above it on the wall was the symbol of the Eclipse Gate Project. His breath caught in his throat. This was the control room, the one he had seen in his dreams. Suddenly, someone behind him whispered, "You okay, Doc?" Ezra turned slowly. It was Dr. Sanbi, one of the few other survivors of the original team. She looked at him, uncertain. "You remember this place, don't you?" Ezra nodded slowly. Not everything, but pieces. He reached toward the console, his fingers tracing the strange alien glyphs. As his skin touched the surface, a pulse of red light flashed across the walls. A hologram shimmered to life. Footage of Ezra himself, standing before the very same control panel. Initiating breach protocol. Estimated stability, 14%. This is our only chance to break dimensional isolation. May whatever gods exist have mercy on us. The soldiers stared at him in silence. Ezra backed away, hands trembling. I don't remember. But the truth was undeniable. He had helped open the gate. Permission? The word echoed faintly in the reinforced hallway. Dr. Ezra held her breath as she typed a string of commands into the control tablet. The metal door ahead buzzed with ancient energy. Old magnetic locks disengaged with a hum that felt like a warning more than an invitation. The group had descended deeper beneath the ruins of the city, moving through layers of forgotten infrastructure and emergency tunnels. The air grew colder as they moved, frost curling along walls like creeping vines. Their breath fogged instantly, and the lights on their rifles flickered despite fully charged batteries. The access door finally slid open with a metallic groan. Beyond it stretched a long corridor lined with flickering blue lights. At the end, the sealed vault marked Project Passage. Ezra stepped forward, something pulling at the back of her mind. A memory, a feeling, not quite fear, but something wrong. She turned to the others. "We're close. This facility is where it all began." Inside the vault, everything was untouched, clean, sterile. Terminal screens glowed with unread messages. Old logs, video feeds, schematics. Captain Rourke motioned for his team to spread out and secure the area, while Ezra and Dr. Malik approached the main console. Ezra's fingers hesitated above the interface. Muscle memory took over. She typed a code she didn't know she remembered. The screen lit up. Archive access. Date, March 12th, Project Passage. Status, Dimensional Gateway. Active, do not interact. A video feed blinked on. A team of scientists, Ezra among them, stood before a swirling blue vortex, suspended high in the atmosphere by gravity stabilizers. Clouds churned around it like a celestial wound. In the recording, Ezra's past self turned to the camera. "We open this not out of arrogance, but necessity. The world is dying. We must find another." Then came the sound, a pulsing, low-frequency rumble that grew into a scream, not from any human, but from the other side. Suddenly, the vortex in the footage twisted. It exploded outward in a blast of cold wind and shadows. A giant silhouette pushed through, serpentine yet feathered, bird-like yet spined, wings made of crystallized snow and teeth longer than a human arm. The feed cut to static. The soldiers shifted uneasily. "That's what came through?" Malik whispered. Ezra was pale. "That's one of them." They moved deeper. The heart of the facility was a cold fusion chamber, still humming faintly. In its center, encased in frost, was a strange device, a miniature portal generator, an anchor tethered to the main rift far above the clouds. A soldier approached it. "What is that?" Ezra answered slowly. "It's a regulator. It keeps the rift open. Without it, the gate might collapse, or worse, become unstable. But why is it still running?" Rourke asked. Ezra didn't know. Or she didn't want to. Suddenly, the lights blinked out. The only illumination came from their helmet lamps. Then came the sounds, scraping, clicking, like something with too many limbs crawling just beyond the walls. "Contact, rear hallway," someone shouted. Gunfire erupted. Shadows flickered as the beam of a flashlight landed on a shape, small, fast-moving, like a man-sized spider with glassy skin and too many eyes. "Open fire." It hissed and leapt. Screams filled the corridor. More came from the vents. The ceiling. A whisper pulsed through Ezra's head. Familiar and hollow. You brought us here. They fought their way back into the fusion chamber, sealing the doors. Only half the squad remained. Blood coated the floor. One soldier sobbed quietly in the corner, missing an arm. Ezra looked around, haunted. They never stopped coming, she whispered. We didn't open a door, we broke a barrier. And it can't be closed from this side. Captain Rourke glared at her. You knew what this was. She backed away. I didn't remember. I was too close to the breach. My memory was burned out, until now. Malik slammed his hand on the table. So what do we do now? Ezra looked at the regulator. We destroy it. Rourke hesitated. And if it doesn't shut the gate? Ezra's voice was cold. Then we die anyway. But at least we won't let them in any further. The chamber trembled. Outside, something massive began to move. They could hear it breathing. The wall cracked. Ice poured through. And from beyond the fracture, a single blue eye stared in. They were out of time. Ruins stretched endlessly. The remnants of what once was a bustling city now lay in silence. Skyscrapers had collapsed into jagged steel skeletons. Roads were torn apart, frozen in a thick sheet of ice. Burned-out cars sat like tombstones, and the air was filled with a faint hum of distant wind howling through the hollow bones of buildings. The convoy slowed. Elira peered out the window of the armored transport, her fingers clenching the edge of the cold glass. This used to be Sector 3, she whispered, her voice cracking. I lived here. No one responded. The soldiers were silent, their eyes scanning the ruins for movement. No birds, no people, not even the usual shadow of scavenger creatures. Just silence. Adrian, still suffering from fragments of headaches and nausea, sat across from her. His head throbbed again as the ruins came into view, the kind of pain that came with memories trying to claw their way out. He saw flashes again. A woman's face, smiling, then screaming, then darkness. He gasped and clutched his forehead. You okay? Asked Captain Reeves from the front seat. The soldier's voice was unusually soft. Adrian nodded. Lying. I'm fine. Their goal was near now. Just a few kilometers beyond the ruined city lay the Dome, a deep underground scientific research bunker, designed to remain secure even during the worst apocalyptic events. It was also the origin of the event, the portal. That place held the answers. And maybe Adrian's missing memories. They parked on the city outskirts and proceeded on foot. The vehicles couldn't maneuver through the wreckage. Their boots crunched on frozen glass and brittle bones. Snow fell in slow motion, flakes the size of coins. As they passed an overturned school bus, they noticed strange claw marks etched deep into the metal. Not scratches, gouges, like something had torn it open in a frenzy. Eyes open, whispered Sergeant Alone, scanning the rooftops. We're in their territory now. Incoming wind front, shouted one of the scouts. Temperature dropped, 10 degrees and falling. They moved faster, visibility decreasing. From above, the clouds thickened unnaturally, swirling directly over the ruined city. And then came a deep sound, a low, alien hum that vibrated in their bones. The hum of the portal. The air shimmered. From the sky descended what looked like a thick black fog. Only it wasn't fog. It was alive. A cloud of winged creatures, no larger than wasps, but each glowing with an inner blue light. They made no sound as they descended. Down, yelled Talone. The swarm struck the soldiers in the front. Screams erupted. The first man hit began to melt. His skin hissed, bones dissolving beneath his armor. Another dropped to his knees, clawing his face as the swarm enveloped him. Acid-based, yelled Elira. They're corrosive. Adrian grabbed her arm and pulled her beneath the remains of a collapsed balcony. The swarm passed overhead, uninterested in those hiding. It fed on motion. 5 soldiers died in seconds. By the time the swarm passed, it left only smoking piles of equipment and bones. The air stank of burned flesh and ozone. Reeves looked pale. We keep moving. We can't stop. Not now. They moved quickly now, adrenaline forcing their legs forward. As they crossed into the final blocks before the dome, they encountered something worse. A mound of corpses, stacked like firewood in a frozen courtyard. Hundreds of bodies, faces frozen in fear. Some wore civilian clothes. Others were in lab coats. And many had no wounds. "What the hell happened to them?" whispered Alira. Adrian stared. His heart stopped. One of the bodies looked like him, or almost him. The same face, same build, but something was off. The eyes were open and the pupils were silver. There was a strange burn mark over the heart. A symbol, one that Adrian couldn't remember, but felt like he should. Then came another memory. He was standing in a chamber of light, machines humming, the others shouting, "It's unstable! Shut it down!" And then a figure, his figure, reaching toward the portal. Adrian stumbled back from the corpse, shaking. "What did you see?" Alira asked, grabbing his arm. "I don't know," he said, "but I think that was me." A cold gust blew across the courtyard, and above them, the portal opened wider, a great, twisting scar in the sky, revealing a world beyond. Not just cold, not just strange, but familiar, as if Adrian had been there before. And then the dome's entrance loomed before them, tall, sealed, and silent. Waiting. Collapse. That was the only word Marshall could think of as he looked at what remained of Sector 12. The surrounding buildings, once reinforced against extreme weather, were now bent inward like flowers crushed underfoot. Steel beams jutted out like broken bones. And in the center stood what looked like the impact point, blackened earth, and a warped crater where the snow had been vaporized into steam. "Geiger's off the charts," muttered one of the techs. "This isn't radiation. It's something else." As the group moved toward the ruins, a low-frequency hum filled the air. It was just at the edge of hearing, but it scratched at the inside of their skulls. Marshall paused, blinking. He remembered this sound. It wasn't from this mission. It was older. 3 months earlier, there had been chaos in the control room. Red lights flared. Readouts climbed into impossible numbers. Marshall had stood at the console, the portal not yet open but trembling into existence. A rippling disk of colorless distortion, barely visible, hung above the tower. He'd been shouting. Someone had been telling him to shut it down, but he hadn't. No one had, because they were so close. And then there was the light, the deafening crack in the sky, and cold, unimaginable cold. He had stood on the topmost catwalk of the facility, closest to the portal, when the world had turned to ice and darkness. Then nothing. Now, a soldier screamed from the ruins. The team ran toward the noise, weapons raised. Private Dale was standing in shock, his flamethrower still hissing from a quick discharge. In front of him, on the cracked cement, something twitched. It was humanoid. Sort of. Its skin was translucent, thin enough to show webbing and twitching organs beneath. But its face, it was almost familiar. Marshall leaned in. "Oh, God," whispered one of the scientists. "Is that someone from the original station?" The creature's head jerked, mouth opening far too wide. It had no vocal cords. Instead, a thick liquid sprayed outward in a cone. One of the soldiers caught it in the face. He dropped screaming as the skin began to bubble and melt. "Back! Back!" screamed Lieutenant Ronson. Flamethrowers roared to life. The creature screamed with steam and fire, twitching violently before collapsing into a pool of greasy residue that sizzled against the snow. Another wave of cold hit them, unnatural, rolling through like a physical force. It made the men stumble, and the hum returned. Louder now. From above, they looked up. The sky had turned black, and in the center of that blackness was the gate. Open again. Despite their distance, they could see it. A perfect circle hanging high above the world, bleeding cold air and things through it. Shapes slithered along its edge. One by one, the soldiers began to panic. "We have to shut it," one scientist yelled. "It's waking up again." Marshall felt it too, a pulling sensation in his mind. And a whisper. It was a voice. Familiar, but not human. Not anymore. It was himself. "I remember." Voice. The word echoed inside Ethan's mind like a haunting bell. Not from the storm outside, not from the soldiers, but from deep within him. A whisper, a chant, a command. He stumbled back, eyes wide, heart hammering in his chest. The sound wasn't external, it was inside his head. He gripped his temples, trying to shut out, but the voice only grew clearer, colder, more ancient. You opened the gate. You were chosen. Return to us. Ethan screamed. The soldiers rushed toward him, weapons raised, but he held up a hand. Don't come near me. Commander Hale approached cautiously. Ethan, what's going on? I think I've been here before, Ethan muttered, his eyes darting around the corridor. This isn't the first time I've walked these halls. Dr. Langley moved closer, scanning Ethan with a handheld medical scanner. You're showing elevated neural activity, almost like you're syncing with something. Are you remembering? He nodded slowly. When the portal opened, I was there. I was right next to it. I remember the light, the cold, and the voices. A loud crack shook the bunker. The floor trembled. The lights flickered red again. A message lit up on a nearby terminal. Primary lockdown override detected. Gate access in progress. They hadn't touched anything, yet something, or someone, was trying to open the portal again. Ethan ran to the terminal, fingers flying over keys. Someone triggered the override. But the signal, it's not coming from inside the bunker. It's coming from outside, near the original portal site. Impossible, Hale said. That area is overrun. No one could survive out there. I think, Ethan said, his voice trembling. Someone did. Before anyone could respond, an ear-splitting shriek tore through the bunker. Not mechanical, not animal, something in between. They turned toward the blast door they'd sealed hours earlier. Now, something was hammering on the other side. Bang, bang, screech. The sound of chitin scratching metal. Hale motioned to the squad. Defensive positions. Keep Ethan protected. Langley, stay with him. The soldiers lined up just as the blast door buckled inward. Another bang. The steel bent. A final slam, then silence. Hale held her breath. Hold steady. Then a soft drip, a sizzling sound. One of the soldiers screamed as acid melted through the ceiling from above, splattering on his shoulder and armor. He fell, convulsing. From the shadows of the ceiling ducts came the clicking sound of many small legs. Above us, Langley shouted. Tiny spiders, glowing, translucent, and completely silent, crawled from vents. Some spat acid, others dissolved into smoke, only to reappear elsewhere. The squad opened fire, but the creatures were fast, unnaturally fast. They didn't move like insects. They anticipated shots, dodged them with something close to intelligence. Ethan reached for a control panel. We need to seal this level, below the stairwell. But we're still down here, Langley said. Do it, Hale ordered. We'll find another way out. Ethan hit the button. The stairwell behind them collapsed in fire and debris, cutting off their exit and trapping them deeper inside the facility. Panting, they retreated to the central lab. It was a massive room, circular, with strange devices, inactive portals, broken control pods, and in the middle, a mirror-like surface, rippling unnaturally in the air. Ethan froze. I remember this, he whispered. This is where it started. Hale turned. This is the core? No, this is the echo, Ethan said slowly. The real portal is above, but this is a reflection. Langley looked into the ripple, her expression drained of color. Something's on the other side, she whispered. A figure, humanoid, watching them from within the liquid-like surface. And then it spoke, not aloud, but in their heads. The gate never closes. Movement. It was all around them now. The walls of the corridor quivered, not with wind, but as if breathing. The frozen concrete began to sweat, a slow, syrupy moisture that oozed down in irregular patterns. Behind them, the tunnel had sealed itself shut with shifting layers of bone-colored ice. Ahead, the bunker door remained closed, lights flickering above it, but the corridor itself was changing. Sergeant Caleb drew his weapon and took a step forward. "Don't," whispered Doctor Who. "Just listen." Everyone paused. They could hear the steady sound of air flowing, but it wasn't from ventilation. It was rhythmic, organic, a low inhale-exhale coming from the corridor walls. Movement in the shadows, under the floor, in the ceiling. "Something's in the walls," Kira said, backing toward Alex. Her hands trembled. Suddenly, a crack opened in the ceiling with a sharp snap, and a stream of web-like strands spilled out. Not silk, but thin, translucent tendrils that wriggled on their own. They twisted towards Sergeant Caleb, latching onto his back with incredible speed. "Get it off," he shouted, thrashing. Alex rushed forward, knife in hand, cutting the strands. They hissed as they were severed, retreating back into the ceiling, dragging something small and fast with them. Just a flicker, a blur, gone too fast to see. Caleb dropped to his knees, gasping. "I think they were trying to map me," he said through clenched teeth. "They weren't attacking," Who muttered, inspecting the residue. "They were scanning him, like a spider feeling a vibration in its web." Alex turned to the door. "We need to get inside. Now!" He ran his ID through the biometric scanner. "Access denied." "What?" Alex whispered. He tried again. "Access denied." "I don't understand," he said, feeling a twinge of panic. "I should be authorized." "Let me try," Doctor Who said. She stepped forward, swiped her hand, and the door made a deep clunk. Access granted. The bunker door opened slowly, revealing a vast chamber lit by red emergency lighting. It was cold, colder than outside and deathly silent. They stepped inside. The door shut behind them with a metallic thud. The walls of the chamber were lined with screens, most broken. Wires hung like vines. Large glass tanks stood on either side of the room, each one shattered from within. What had once been contained here had gotten out long ago. At the far end of the room, there was a second door, but this one had something scrawled on it. In blood, "You made US." "What the hell does that mean?" Kira asked, voice barely audible. Doctor Who said nothing. She walked ahead slowly, staring at the words. Alex remained still. Something deep inside him stirred. He looked around the room, and images began flashing in his mind. Glass breaking, screaming, lights flickering, a man in a lab coat yelling his name. Not Alex. Dr. Rail. "Get away from the..." It was his voice, his face. But the memory ended there. His knees buckled. Kira rushed over to him. "What's wrong?" I think I was one of them," he said quietly. "One of the ones who opened the portal." "What?" Alex pressed his palm to the side of his head, trying to force the memory back. We were researching dimension-folding mechanics. We believed we could create a tunnel between parallel worlds." "You did," Who said flatly, now staring at one of the broken tanks. "And you chose this place because it was far enough from the public. But what came through wasn't what we expected," Alex whispered. "Not just creatures," Who said, now turning to face him. "The cold, the change in physical laws, the breakdown of matter. It wasn't a parallel Earth. It was a place where life waits, a place where thought and biology are the same." Alex stood up. "Then why are we here? Why come back?" "Because someone wants the portal reopened," Who said. The red lights flickered once. Then they shut off completely. Total darkness. And then came the sound. A deep, rolling growl. Not animal. Not machine. And footsteps. Hundreds of them. Alex reached for his weapon, but Who stepped back. "I didn't come here to stop it," she said. Her eyes were shining now. "You," Alex started. "I remember everything. You were just too close to the blast, too close to the breach. It burned it out of you. But I remember Rail." She backed away into the shadows. "I came here to finish what we started." Suddenly, the tanks along the walls began to pulse with light. Inside, shapes began forming, humanoid but shifting, melting, becoming. Kira screamed. Caleb fired into the glass. Too late. The tanks cracked. The things inside were awake. The word ice echoed in Leon's mind as they reached the cliffside basin that overlooked the colossal valley. The wind screamed like 1,000 dying animals, and the snow no longer fell. It lashed at them like shards of broken glass. They stood before the final stretch, the collapsed mountain face that shielded the bunker where it all began. From this elevation, they could see the full extent of the devastation. The forest that once sprawled like a green sea was now a petrified, jagged graveyard. Creatures roamed between the frozen trees. Shadows with antlers, titanic quadrupeds with luminous veins, and birds that flew without wings, gliding on sheer cold. "We need to move now," Sergeant Vallon barked, squinting through his cracked visor. "Another hour out here, and we freeze to death." But Leon didn't move. Something deep in his bones pulsed. A memory, not a thought. Something older resurfaced. He had stood here before. The image struck him with the clarity of lightning. He had been standing right here, 3 months ago, wearing a clean lab coat, trembling not from cold but anticipation. "Dr. Grayson," whispered a voice. He turned. No one was there, just the others trudging ahead. Sergeant Vallon, Marla, 2 of the remaining soldiers, all unaware. But the whisper hadn't come from outside. It had bubbled up from within him. They descended the last ridge, their boots sinking in snow layered atop brittle metal, hidden beneath ice and debris. The bunker entrance finally emerged. A massive steel door warped inward, as though melted and frozen in the same moment. It glowed faintly blue. "This is it," Marla said. "The entrance to Station E9. This is where the transmission was last sent." Vallon turned to Leon. "You said you worked in E9. You sure this is the only way in?" Leon nodded slowly. "Yes, I think." But he wasn't sure anymore. They activated the manual override. Gears screamed, ice cracked, and a breath of air escaped from within. Air that reeked of decay and ozone. Something else slipped out too. A sound. Wet. Slithering. Then a light flickered deep inside. The bunker's emergency power was still active. "Guns up," Vallon ordered. They entered single file. The walls were covered in frost, but Leon's hand brushed against one panel that felt warm. Familiar. His palm fit perfectly. The lights overhead burst to life. A voice spoke. "Welcome back, Dr. Grayson." Everyone froze. Leon stared at the panel. His hand hadn't left it. "What the hell was that?" whispered Marla. Leon didn't respond. Instead, he stepped forward, turning the corner to a massive control room. Its glass had been shattered inward, blood staining the consoles. But what drew his attention was a hologram still flickering above the central console. It was a simulation, a model of the sky, of the gate, still open, still pouring out those creatures. And a countdown. Cycle remaining. 3 hours, 12 minutes, and 27 seconds. Marla gasped. "What the hell is this?" "It's the stabilization window," Leon muttered, voice monotone. He didn't know how he knew, but he knew. If the cycle finished, something worse would come through. He approached a locked chamber labeled Primary Dimensional Interface. Without being told, he placed his hand on the scanner. It opened. Inside was a sealed capsule. A body floated within, hooked to wires. Human, but wrong. Its eyes were completely white, and its mouth was sewn shut. A tag read, "Subject 01 Grayson, Beta." Leon stumbled back. "No." Marla stared at him. "Leon, what is that?" He fell to his knees. "It's me." Vallon lifted his rifle. "You're saying that thing is you?" Leon trembled. "No, I think I'm the backup." His memories flooded in like a burst dam. He had opened the portal. On purpose. Not for science, but for something else. To become something more. And when it failed, when the energy overwhelmed him, he had fragmented. They had made a copy. He was the copy. And the real Leon was already on the other side. Watching. Waiting. Missed. That was all they saw now. A creeping fog that rolled in from beneath the ruined skyscrapers like a living entity. Every breath they took seemed to drag it deeper into their lungs, chilling them from the inside out. Even the fire team's thermal scanners were useless in this gray hell. Every reading distorted, every heat signature obscured. The city was silent, but not empty. "Stay tight. No wandering. We move in pairs. Captain Dross ordered. His voice was low, strained. He didn't like this. No one did. They were approaching the core now. The blast radius. The portal site was said to be directly underneath what used to be the city's central science hub. What remained was a twisted garden of steel bones and blackened walls. The skies had grown darker here. The cold had intensified. And most unsettling of all, the mist clung to them now, wrapping around their legs, licking their hands, whispering. A sudden scream tore through the silence. Private Isaac. They spun around, weapons raised. But there was no one there. Just his rifle on the ground. Just mist. "Thermals, now!" barked the lieutenant. Nothing, except the faint silhouette of something moving. Something tall, thin, but as they focused, it melted into the fog like smoke. "Isaac!" yelled one of the men. No answer, not even a scream anymore. One soldier raised his arm and pointed toward a half-collapsed building. There, deep in the mist, something large moved between floors, bending unnaturally, eyes glowed with a faint violet hue. Then more eyes, hundreds, opened behind it. "Contact!" someone shouted, and all hell broke loose. Bullets ripped through the fog. Muzzle flashes became the only light. But nothing fell. The things, they didn't scream when shot. They didn't even bleed. They just moved faster. As they closed in, Mara saw one up close. It wasn't like the others. Its skin shimmered like water, and for a second, only a second, she saw herself in its reflection. But then it lunged. She fired. It turned into mist again. Illusions. They weren't just physical threats. These creatures manipulated perception. Memories. Fear. They ran. The squad was scattered. A dozen fell behind. Mara, Dross, Elvin, and two others made it to the outer elevator shaft of the science tower. They slammed the doors shut, panting, bleeding. "They're inside our minds," Mara whispered. "They're using our thoughts against us." "No," Dross said, face pale. "They're not just in our minds." He held up his hand. It was melting, the skin turning transparent. Mara gasped. "You're not real? A copy? A memory?" Dross smiled, hollow. "That portal, it didn't just open to another world. It infected us. Fractured time. I've been here before." Then the elevator rumbled. Power still flowed somehow. It descended, slowly, groaning, to the bunker, to the site, and behind them, crawling down the walls like spiders, came more of the Mistborn. Ashes drifted. Tiny gray specks swirled in the dim. Dying light filtering through the remains of the city's once proud skyline. The group trudged forward, boots crunching glass, metal, and bone beneath them. The cold had turned from bitter to unbearable. Even with the high-tech insulation suits, frost crept along seams and into joints. Weapons malfunctioned. Breaths turned to vapor and froze midair. "We're close," murmured Dr. Hayes, wiping frost from the cracked screen of her tracker. "The signal's coming from beneath that collapsed overpass. That should be the entrance to the bunker." The soldiers, now reduced to 36 from the original 100, moved with mechanical precision but deadened spirits. They had lost comrades to ambushes by cloaked predators, swarms of acidic birds, and yesterday, to a pool of water that turned into writhing, invisible tendrils. The man leading them, the one who had taken to calling himself Carter, felt his head throb again. The headaches had intensified as they approached the bunker. Images flashed at random, a giant metallic ring, humming, screams in a sterile white room. His own voice screaming, "It's not stable." He touched the back of his neck again, still tender, still pulsing. As the team worked to dig out the entrance, Carter wandered. Something pulled him away. Behind a crumpled transport vehicle, partially buried in snow, a jagged black sign jutted out of the ice. "Nexus Observation Facility 01. He froze. His hands trembled as he reached down and brushed away the snow. A memory hit like a bullet. A young scientist, eager, brilliant, standing before the Nexus gate. Another flash. He was arguing with someone. A woman. She screamed that it wasn't ready, that the coordinates had shifted. And then light, blinding, roaring cold. A voice behind him broke the spell. "Sir, we've opened the hatch." He turned slowly, face pale. "Good," he said hollowly. "Let's go in." Inside the bunker, the steel door creaked open, revealing a spiraling staircase leading downward, lined with emergency lights. Flickering, many dead. As they descended, warmth returned slightly, the facility protected from the worst of the elements. The walls were covered in strange writing, some in English, some in what looked like scratches or claw marks, and some not of this world, letters that shifted when stared at too long. They reached the central chamber. A giant console hummed with dormant power. In the center, a circular platform surrounded by control panels, broken screens, and skeletons in lab coats. One of the soldiers whispered, "What is this place?" Carter stepped forward. He didn't need to ask. "I know this place." They all turned to him. He stared at the console, hands tracing its cracked surface. "I worked here. I helped open the gate." Murmurs. "What the hell are you talking about?" "I was part of the research team. I was there when we triggered the portal. I stood right next to it." He gestured at the ceiling. "And then everything went cold. My memory, it's been coming back in pieces." Dr. Hayes stepped forward. "Carter, if that's true, then maybe you can help us close it." He looked at her, expression shifting. "No," he said, "that's not what I came here to do." The truth unfolds. Suddenly, alarms began to blare. The lights turned red. A countdown appeared on a half-functional screen. "Reactivation sequence, 059. Hayes screamed, "What did you do?" Carter looked around. He didn't blink. "I didn't do anything." "They did." "Them?" a soldier shouted. "No," Carter said. "Us. I was never meant to remember. But the cold brought it back. The headaches, the dreams, it wasn't damage. It was suppression." He walked to the center platform and placed his hand on the interface. It glowed green. The room shook. Something massive shifted above. Dr. Hayes screamed, "What are you trying to do?" "Finish what we started," he whispered. "It was never about closing the gate. It was about letting them in, all of them. This world was just the beginning." Then Carter looked up and smiled. His eyes turned black. Hollow was the only word that fit what they had become. Terran stared blankly at the soldier in front of him, or what had once been a soldier. The thing was kneeling, hand still clutching its rifle, but its face had collapsed inward like a punctured balloon. Empty sockets where I should have been. No blood, no bones, no screams. Just hollow, and it wasn't alone. All around the central chamber, the team found them. Figures frozen mid-movement, as if they had simply stopped being people, as if something had drained them of everything. Did they do this to themselves? Sarah asked softly. "No," Tara muttered, eyes scanning the intricate, glowing symbols on the far wall. They were emptied. From the darkness near the chamber ceiling came a dry, rustling hiss. Yannick raised his weapon. What was that? The light from their suits caught movement, a shimmer, like heat distortion. Then out of thin air, shapes emerged, twisting, twitching forms like eel skeletons wrapped in wet silk, floating just above the floor. They were invisible in the water. Here, they were barely visible at all. "Contact!" One of the soldiers shouted, but his voice was drowned out by a chorus of whispers, not voices, not words. A pressure against the skull, a squeezing of thoughts. Terran dropped to one knee, clutching his head. He remembered this sensation. The portal hadn't just let things in. It had spoken to him, promised him. Back! Fall back! Sarah yelled, dragging Terran toward the corridor. Several soldiers were firing now, but their bullets passed through the things like wind through smoke. One creature latched onto a man's chest, and with a low shimmer, his body began to shrink, imploding like the others, until nothing was left but gear and clothing. They ran, down corridors of strange light and impossible angles. The bunker no longer felt man-made. It had changed, or perhaps it was always part of something else. As they regrouped in a tight metal chamber lined with monitor panels and smashed equipment, Terran's breathing steadied. One of the screens flickered back to life. Footage played from a camera near the surface. The portal, it pulsed with unnatural color, black-violet, and a light that was somehow colder than darkness. Through its yawning mouth, creatures swam, flying through the sky like fish in a freezing ocean. And then he saw himself, 3 months ago, standing right next to the machine, smiling. Sarah turned to him. "Taryn, is that you?" He stared. The footage continued. He spoke into the camera. "This is Taryn Vale. We've done it. We've pierced the veil between worlds. The cold is a side effect, but they'll adapt. They'll reshape us. We'll be perfect." Sarah backed away. "What the hell did you do?" Taryn's hand was trembling, not from fear, something else, a vibration beneath his skin. "A call. I didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't remember." But a part of him had. And somewhere in the distance, through 1,000 miles of snow and ash, the portal opened wider. Silence. That was the only thing left after the blast of wind settled. For a moment, the world seemed to forget to breathe. The portal above churned, and something within it shimmered, like an eye blinking in the cold dark. Then, from the edges of the crater where the bunker once stood, the first movement came, not from the soldiers or the scientists, but from the blood of the commander, smeared across Aiken's glove and the broken floor, began to shift. It didn't congeal or dry. Instead, it slithered like mercury, snaking toward the open passage, toward the noise. "Back!" Aiken shouted, stepping over the twitching form of a fallen soldier. The team stumbled down into the new opening revealed by the explosion. It wasn't part of the bunker blueprints. This tunnel was organic. Walls smooth like bone, floors slick like the inside of the throat. The lights flickered as if uncertain whether to follow or flee. Wren led the way with his rifle pointed forward, jaw clenched. May followed, hands trembling but eyes sharp. Aiken and Alara brought up the rear. No one spoke. Not after what they'd seen. Not after the commander's death. They descended for what felt like hours, past murals etched into the walls. Depictions of creatures from different dimensions. Leviathans with glassy skin and spiral eyes. Spider things dancing across cracked moons. Cities built into the backs of dying gods. It was a museum of madness. At the base of the tunnel, the path opened into a chamber, vast and cathedral-like. Its ceiling rose into blackness. In the center stood a device, alien in design, but unmistakably familiar to Aiken. I've seen this before," he muttered, stepping forward. The device pulsed with light. Symbols ran along its sides, identical to those Aiken remembered from his fragmented memory. He could almost hear the voice again, the one from before the opening. A voice not human, not even close. Alara looked at him. "Aiken, you built this, didn't you?" He didn't answer. The device was waking up, and so was his memory. From the shadows above, something dropped, a long, multi-legged creature with translucent skin. It landed on one of the soldiers before anyone could react, piercing the man's chest with a scythe-like claw and dragging his body upward into the darkness. They opened fire, but the creature was already gone. Then came the scream from May. She backed away from the far wall, which was slowly beginning to breathe. Hands, dozens of them, pressed from behind the flesh-like surface. Some were clawed. Others had fingers too long, too sharp. The wall tore open, and from within poured creatures the size of wolves, with the faces of drowned men. "Run!" Alara screamed, but there was nowhere to run. Aiken stepped forward toward the device. His heart raced. Something in him clicked, a key unlocking. "I didn't build this," he whispered. "I translated it." The symbols pulsed again, matching his voice. The portal above roared. Cold flooded into the chamber, frost creeping up walls and weapons. Alara grabbed his shoulder. "What do you mean translated?" "I wasn't the one who designed this technology. I was the one who deciphered it, the one who made it possible for them to activate it." "And who are they?" she asked. But Aiken wasn't listening anymore, because from behind the device, from a mirrored wall that shimmered like a surface of liquid metal, a shape was stepping through, tall, elegant, and not from this world. Its skin reflected memories. Its voice sounded like a choir whispering inside his brain. "Welcome back. it said, looking straight at him. And Aiken remembered everything. The frozen walls of the crevasse echoed with a sound no human voice could reproduce, high-pitched, guttural, and almost pleading. Riley gritted his teeth as he climbed down into the darkness, the rope burning against his gloved hands. Every heartbeat thudded in his ears. Below him, Lieutenant Rourke had already reached the bottom. She was shining her flashlight into what appeared to be a tunnel. No, a corridor. Metallic walls lined with strange, pulsing blue symbols. A base! Riley muttered as his boots hit the icy floor. Not ours, Rourke replied grimly, and not of this earth. Behind them, the rest of the squad descended in tense silence. Dr. Vora crouched beside the wall, fingers tracing the alien glyphs. This isn't just a facility, she whispered. It's the nursery. A what? Riley asked, but before she could answer, the corridor lights flickered to life. On their own, the blue glyphs pulsed faster. A vibration trembled through the floor. Then came the sound, a distant thudding, like footsteps, too many footsteps. A soldier screamed. They turned to see Corporal Mateo being pulled into the wall itself. No, through a membrane disguised as part of the corridor. His scream was cut off with a wet snap. Rourke opened fire, but the bullets hit nothing. We need to move. Now, she barked. As they rushed forward, the walls behind them began to shift. Sections folded open like breathing lungs, revealing hundreds of small holes, each emitting a low hiss. From within crawled the spider things they had seen back in the ruins. Only now they were faster, more aggressive, and glowing with the same blue light. Dr. Vora tripped. Riley grabbed her arm and hauled her up just in time. This isn't a nursery, she gasped, breathless. It's an incubation chamber. We were never supposed to find this place. The corridor opened into a vast, circular chamber. At its center stood a towering, pulsating crystal spire, at least 20 meters tall, surrounded by thick coils of black tendrils rooted into the ice. Riley froze, recognition punching through the fog of his memory. I've been here, he muttered. I stood right here. Suddenly, a flood of memories surged back. The screaming, the countdown, the key code, the man in the red coat saying, "No turning back." You helped open it, Vora whispered. Didn't you? Riley turned, his face pale. I didn't just help. I triggered it. The portal. I thought we were saving the world. Then what the hell were you saving it from? A deafening roar shook the chamber. From behind the spire, something enormous uncoiled, many-limbed, eyeless, and glistening like a leech soaked in starlight. Its presence bent gravity. The soldiers opened fire instinctively. Fall back. Rourke screamed. Everyone fall. But it was too late. Fall back. The words rang out, but by the time they echoed through the chamber, most of the squad was already falling, just not the way Rourke had intended. Sergeant Lennox screamed as his body was lifted off the ground, twisted midair, and slammed into a pillar of blackened ice. His limbs contorted backward like a puppet whose strings had been violently yanked. Rourke pulled Riley and Dr. Vora behind a jutting slab of crystal. The air was thick, almost liquid, like it was resisting their every movement. Rourke! Riley shouted, watching the team disintegrate one by one. We have to get them out. They're gone, she snarled, her voice cracking. Look. He turned. Mateo was standing in the open, but something was terribly wrong. His silhouette shimmered like heat waves. His skin cracked, glowed from within, and began shifting into something else. His human features melting into a smooth, expressionless mask. His eyes, no longer eyes at all, gleamed with the same blue light as the glyphs. Then he opened his mouth and shrieked. Not a scream, not even remotely human. It was the same sound they had heard echoing through mountains 3 months ago, the one that haunted Riley's dreams. They're changing, Vora whispered, horrified. The parasites, they're not just taking over. They're rewriting them. Rourke raised her rifle but hesitated. Is that still Mateo? No, Riley said coldly. That's whatever's on the other side of that portal, wearing him like a suit. Suddenly, the spire pulsed again, and a wave of pressure knocked him to the floor. Riley clutched his head as a fresh memory surged forward. Not a dream, not an echo. A real event. A console. A handprint scanner. The countdown. The screaming scientists. And the man in the red coat turning to him with wide, terrified eyes. You touched it too long. You linked. Get away from... Then white light. Then silence. Riley staggered to his feet. I opened the gate and they linked me. Vora grabbed his arm. What does that mean? What are they doing? I think, he looked toward the spire, I think they're trying to finish what I started. From behind them, the air split open with sharp crack, and dozens more creatures began pouring in, limbs bending the wrong way, faces half human, half nightmare. But then everything froze. Mid-motion, mid-scream, the spire dimmed, and a voice, but not a spoken one, invaded all their minds at once. A collective thought, a whisper inside their blood. Riley, return what you took. The spire lit up again, and the walls of the chamber began to close in. Run. Riley said, almost in a trance. Run. The tunnels behind the spire weren't made of stone anymore. They pulsed. As Rourke, Riley, and Dr. Vora advanced, the ground seemed to breathe, each step pressing into a surface that squirmed like veins, warm and alive. This thing is alive, Vora whispered. This isn't Earth anymore. It's woven with their substance. Riley's mind felt like it was cracking. Every second brought new images, new sounds. A table, a piece of meteorite on it. Scientists gathered around. And then himself, Riley, reaching out and touching it as time froze. Riley? Rourke's voice pulled him back. He swallowed. I didn't just open the portal. I merged with them. Vora's eyes widened. What do you mean? That day in the lab, that stone wasn't just alien matter. It was a sentient presence. The contact, it wasn't a doorway. It was a bridge. I entered their mind, and they entered mine. Rourke stepped back. Then why are they here now? Why are they attacking? Because they're afraid of us, Riley said. Or worse, because they're us. A moment of silence. Then the tunnel walls trembled again. Screams from behind signaled the creatures were closing in. But this wasn't a physical war anymore. Riley kept walking. Eventually, they reached a room, or what used to be a lab, now transformed into a chamber of glowing, vein-covered walls. In the center, a core. Surrounding it stood 6 motionless figures. Their faces familiar. This, Rourke whispered. Our original team. Are they alive? No. They stood frozen like stone. But their eyes were open. And in each of their eyes, Riley saw his own face reflected. You were the first to touch. The voice didn't come from the air. It came directly into their minds. You gave us form. Your fears, your desires. And we took shape. Riley dropped to his knees. No, you were just a reflection, a creation of ours. But the created surpasses the creator. And now we're the creators. From the walls, a new shape emerged. A being. It had Riley's human face, but it was semi-transparent, glowing, massive. Rourke fired, but the bullets dissolved mid-air. Riley, Dr. Vora said through tears, you have to stop this. You're their center. You're the gate. Riley stood. Then I'll close it. As the creature approached, he stepped toward the core. Inside, he saw his reflection, but no longer human. He placed his hands on it. His mind ignited. All the creatures, everything that had come through the portal, froze for a moment, as if Riley was infecting their system like a virus. And then, everything was washed in light. He opened his eyes to a blue sky. But silence. A terrible, endless silence. Only Rourke was beside him. The rest of the team, gone. The portal erased from the sky. How long has it been? Riley asked. Rourke looked away. 3 months. The world had descended into chaos. A wave of cold had frozen an entire continent. But when the portal closed, everything stopped. Yet something was missing. When Riley looked in the mirror, he saw someone else in his eyes, as if something was still watching, as if something inside him whispered, you only closed the gate, but we're already inside.